We are back again. Welcome back to my channel, Revenge Stories. Before I delve into the heart of this story, I want to take a moment to invite you to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support truly means the world to us and fuels our passion for sharing these interesting stories. If you connect with our content, please leave a comment. Every interaction helps us foster a stronger community, and for that, I am incredibly grateful. Stay until the end to fully experience the characters' emotions and the surprising twist. It began with a crash. I was just a passenger, riding home from school. My brother Liam was driving. I sat beside him, earbuds in, half listening as he talked about some internship our mom had been urging him to apply for. Then came the screeching of tires, a sharp jolt, metal twisting, glass shattering, and pain. So much pain. Then, nothing. When I finally woke up, it wasn't to the comfort of my parents' voices or the warmth of their hands. I awoke beneath the harsh glow of hospital lights, surrounded by the sterile scent of antiseptic. My arms were tethered to IVs, my body aching like it had been stitched together from pieces that didn't quite fit. My mouth was dry, my throat raw. I tried to speak, but all that came out was a strained groan. A nurse noticed I was awake and quietly called for someone. Moments later, my parents entered the room. But they didn't rush in with tears or relief. They didn't cling to me or whisper how grateful they were that I was alive. They simply stood there, tired, distant. "She's awake," my mother said. Not to me, to the doctor. My father didn't even look at me. The doctor, at least, offered a kind smile. "You've been through major surgery," he explained gently. "You lost a kidney in the accident, but you're stable now. We managed to save you." My mind swam. I tried to ask about Liam, but I couldn't form the words. The nurse brought me ice chips, and eventually, I found the strength to whisper his name. "He's fine," my mother said casually. "Just a few scratches. You'll be here for a while." There was no gratitude in her voice, no sorrow, only the inconvenience of it all. Days blurred together. I lay in that bed trying to stitch myself together, body, mind, soul. But Liam never visited. My parents only came when they had to. I told myself they were in shock. Maybe they didn't know how to handle this. Until one night changed everything. It was late. The pain kept me awake, the room far too cold. I was drifting in and out of sleep when I heard voices just outside the door. I stayed still, listening, weak, but alert. It was them, my parents, talking to the doctor in low voices. "So you're saying if we take her other kidney?" It was my mother's voice. "She wouldn't survive that," the doctor replied, alarmed. "She's already lost one. Removing the second would—" "But Liam needs it," my father interrupted. "He's the one with a future." "She's just a girl," my mother said coldly. "She doesn't even know what she wants. She won't ever carry much or run. She's already limited." And then came the words that shattered me completely. This would be a sacrifice. I wasn't a daughter in that moment. I was a spare part, a burden, an afterthought. And for the first time in my life, I understood what it felt like to be truly alone. Not because no one was there. "This would be a sacrifice," my mother added, her tone flat, final. "One that means something." The doctor went quiet, stunned. "You're talking about taking your daughter's life?" "She'd be doing something good for once," my mother snapped. I couldn't breathe. My own parents, my flesh and blood, were trying to give away the only kidney I had left. Not out of desperation, not with tears in their eyes, but with cold calculations behind closed doors. For Liam. They hadn't told me. They hadn't asked me. They were planning it behind my back, as if I didn't matter. My stomach twisted. I pulled the scratchy hospital blanket over my face and tried to stay still, to hide my trembling. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear out the IVs and run, but I could barely move. Tears streamed into my pillow. I had always known they loved Liam more. He was their golden child, the star, the dream. They talked about him like he hung the moon. I was just there. The extra, the shadow in every photograph, the forgotten birthday, the quiet seat at the dinner table. but I never imagined they would choose his life over mine so completely. That night, I lay in silence, waiting for morning. And when it came, I made a decision. I would live. Not just survive, but live. Not for them, not to be convenient, but to reclaim myself. The next morning, I quietly asked the nurse if I could speak to the hospital's social worker. I didn't explain why, I just whispered, "I don't feel safe." Her eyes softened. Something in my voice must have told her this wasn't about my injuries. It was about something much deeper, something vital. By that afternoon, I was propped weakly in bed, barely sitting up. Across from me sat a kind-faced woman named Judith, her notepad resting on her lap, her voice soft and patient. I told her everything. Not a single tear fell. I had cried them all the night before. Now I was hollow but steady. My parents asked a doctor to take my only kidney for my brother. I said slowly. They said I wasn't worth as much, that he had a future. Judith blinked once. Then she closed her notepad. That was all it took. That day changed everything. I didn't see my parents again for a week. Judith filed an ethics complaint. A protective order was placed on my room. My medical records were locked. My care was mine alone to control. For the first time in my life, I was terrified, but free. Judith helped me make arrangements. I wasn't quite 18 yet, just a few months away. But with a judge's approval and the hospital's hallway audio, which had captured parts of that awful conversation, they granted me temporary legal separation from my parents. They couldn't touch me. Not physically, not legally, not anymore. When my parents found out, they were furious. They stormed the hospital waiting room, demanding access, shouting over the front desk. I watched from, "She's brainwashing our daughter! That girl belongs to us!" But I didn't. Not anymore. Not after what they tried to do. They had lost the right to call me theirs the moment they decided I was disposable. I didn't belong to them anymore, not after what they said, not after what they planned. The news spread quietly among the hospital staff. I became known as the kidney girl. Some nurses wept when they heard what had happened. One doctor came in, placed a gentle hand on mine, and said softly, "You deserve to live on your own terms." 3 weeks later, I was discharged into foster care. It wasn't glamorous. The apartment was small, the mattress was thin, but it was safe, and safe was everything. While I recovered, I finished high school online. At night, I worked at a local bookstore, shelving stories while writing my own in silence. I saved every penny. When social services offered to help with college, I declined. I didn't want anything that came with strings. I wanted full control of my life, every piece of it. Eventually, I changed my last name. I chose Olin, my great-grandmother's maiden name. A name untouched by betrayal. A name with no ties to people who tried to trade my life away. Years passed quietly, but I never forgot. Not when I got my first job at a healthcare startup. Not when I climbed my way to head of operations within 3 years. Not when, at 24, I became part owner of the very company I helped build from the ground up. And certainly not when I saw his name, Liam, on an executive candidate list. It hit me like ice. His resume stared back at me like a ghost from a different world. He had no idea I was alive, let alone thriving. In his mind, I had disappeared into the system. Maybe he even believed I had died, that Mom and Dad had gotten what they wanted, that I'd been erased. But I hadn't died. I had simply been quietly building the life no one thought I could have, and now I was the one holding his fate in my hands. I invited him to an in-person interview. Of course, he didn't recognize the name Olin. He didn't suspect. He didn't check. He certainly didn't expect to walk into the executive boardroom and find me sitting at the head of the table. He froze. His mouth fell open. "You?" he stammered, voice trembling. "You're alive?" I smiled, calm, poised. Alive, healthy, and no longer yours to silence. Liam's eyes darted around the room, from the marble floor to the gold-trimmed glass walls to the framed awards behind me, but they kept returning to my face, to the strength he never imagined I could have. You're the COO?" he whispered, stunned. I leaned forward, fingers laced, eyes unwavering. "Yes, of the company you're begging to join. The one you sent a resume to without even doing a background check." He gave a weak smile, trying to recover. Look, I was just following opportunities. I didn't know. You didn't know I'd survive, I asked, or that I'd become more than a body on a hospital bed, more than just a spare part. Liam opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come. Liam opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no words. I tapped his resume with one manicured finger. I read your resume, I said. Your grades are average, your experience is thin, but your entitlement? That's fully intact. He swallowed hard. Listen, I didn't know what Mom and Dad said. I wasn't part of that. They came to the hospital, I said, voice rising, and told a doctor to take my organ without even asking me. They said she's not as important as Liam. I heard them. I was awake. Do you know what that does to someone at 17? He looked down, silent. Tell me, Liam, I continued, how does it feel to interview for a job at a company owned by the girl you thought would disappear? The one you thought was disposable? Please, he whispered, his voice thin. I need this job. Things haven't been easy. I stood slowly and walked to the window. The city sparkled below us, alive, pulsing, full of possibility. Turned back, my voice cold but steady. You can tell Mom and Dad I heard every word. And now, I'm in a position they'll never reach. Then I met his eyes. As for this job, I said, pausing, I created a policy here. One that protects people who were betrayed by the people who were supposed to love them. People who were treated like nothing. A breath. So no, Liam, you don't get to put on a suit and walk in here like nothing ever happened. His face turned red. You're ruining my life, he hissed. I tilted my head slightly. Oh, you mean like all of you tried to ruin mine? By stealing my body, my future, my freedom? He glared at me. You always played the victim. I leaned in just enough for him to hear every word. No, Liam, I was the victim. Now, I'm the ending. He stormed out without another word. I stood there for a long moment, silent, calm, at peace. Then I picked up the phone and called HR. Blacklist the name permanently, I said. And notify all our partner firms. He won't be hired there either. That night, I went home to a modest apartment overlooking the lake. I didn't need a mansion. I had something better, peace. I sat on the balcony, the breeze cool against my face, and opened an email from the hospital. They were launching a new campaign to protect minors from unethical parental control in medical decisions. They were naming it after me, the Claire Protection Protocol. Claire, my real name, not the one my parents gave me, the one I chose the day I freed myself. A week later, a letter arrived. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was from them, my parents. Inside was a desperate plea. They were in financial ruin. Liam couldn't find work. They were losing their home. They asked if I would help, as their daughter. I wrote back. I was your daughter when I was unconscious in a hospital bed. You chose your son. So now, live with that choice. I never heard from them again. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind brushes against the windows and the world feels still, I remember everything. The pain, the silence, the betrayal. And then I remember who I became because of it. Not just a survivor, not just a girl, but Claire, Olin, whole, free, unbreakable. But I never heard from them again. Still, sometimes, late at night, I find myself drifting back to that moment in the hospital, the fluorescent lights humming above me, tubes in my arms, barely conscious, my body broken but my mind just awake enough to hear it all. I remember my mother's voice, calm, emotionless, as she asked a doctor, "Can we take her organ for our son?" They thought I wouldn't hear. They thought I wouldn't matter. They thought that moment would be the end of me. But now, I smile. Because they had no idea. That was only the beginning. If you love this video, please like and subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. I love you all.